Good morning. This is a Vox AC15 Custom Classic 1 that I did a lot of mods on and upgraded the speaker on for a client. Very nice sounding amp. The owner says he's been loving it, but the reverb stopped working. I said, bring it in, let me take a look. It's probably something simple. If I bring up the reverb level, you hear that? Some of you already know what that means. Well, I think the owner got very, very lucky. Want me to see me fix the reverb on camera? Just pulled out right here. So let's see, we should have reverb now. Sounds like we do. A little bit of hum because of the nature of the tank orientation. I might play around with that, but. All right, so the owner got very, very lucky. Let's do a quick tour of some of the upgrades I did to this model. I don't get asked to do a lot of upgrades on the Custom Classic AC15 because it's a relatively inexpensive amp and people don't want to throw any extra money at it. But for those, for whom it hits their niche just right, it can be well worth it. Of crucial importance, I replaced the little input jack on a little PC card with a standalone cliff jack where the ground is not dependent on that jack being tight, which is a common fault in the Custom Classic series. And that cliff jack has a shielded wire going to the grid of V1 with a grid stopper right there. I use a little Dale metal film. Let's see here. The crucial coupling caps have been replaced with Vishay MKT 1813s. I could have used Panasonics for that as well. Two very important picofarad value caps have been upgraded to some Vishay 1 kilovolt ceramics. The cathode bypass caps were replaced not just with higher quality Vishays, but with specific values to tailor the sound. A little trick I do to the plate resistor on the plate-driven Voxes to make the response feel a bit more like the cathode follower tone stacks. I've got my little switch here, which does my tone stack alteration to make the top boost channel sound a bit more like the mid-60s Vox amps that the Beatles used on Revolver and Pepper. I think of it as the Pepper switch. Sometimes I've referred to it as the Attitude switch. You'll get a chance to hear that soon. Let's see, I believe I left the stock filter caps. They were fine. I upped the screen grid resistors on the output tubes. These are the stock grid stoppers on the output tubes. I added additional ones at the tube in series to get my preferred total value there. I upgraded the filter caps and changed them to the correct or more correct JMI spec for the correct sound with these Vishays. My meter loves to interrupt. It's telling me it's about to power off. I'll help it with that process. This amp had some 5-watt cement block resistors here, here, and here, like it has here. And they were really close to these caps to begin with, and these caps are a little bit larger in diameter. So I moved them to the other side of the board so they don't bake these caps. Crucially, on the AC15 Custom Classic and on the TBX era AC15, instead of putting in a cut control, they just had a 220K resistor where the original had a 250K pot. And that sounds like having the cut control permanently set to its brightest setting, and that makes these amps very harsh. I replaced that 220K resistor with, I don't remember what I used in this. I usually use somewhere between 47K and 68K for most players. That really sits nice, and you don't have to think about it. It still has plenty of treble, but it doesn't have that nails on the blackboard response. Those are all relatively simple things to do aside from the filter caps. You do have to pull the board to do this. It can be well worth it though. So I'm going to play around with the reverb tank orientation and try to get that hum minimized, and then put it together, slap up a real mic, and we'll see what this thing can sound like. Oh, and I changed out the speaker to a Warehouse Reaper, which is kind of their version of a G12H30, which is a really good choice for a Voxy sound and an open back 1x12 combo if you don't want to spend for the Celestian Blue. As I was putting it together, I realized that no, I had actually changed out all these caps as well. They're Nishikon 105 degrees, so much nicer than stock. I just did such a neat job of it that a couple years later now, I fooled myself and didn't remember. But yeah, they're changed too. All right, let's see what this amp is sounding like now. We have reverb. I'm not a big fan of the tanks in these. They're very long decay. So I'm going to turn the reverb off for the rest of this because it bothers me, but the owner likes it. It works. My job done. So let me turn that off real fast. I turned it up just a slight bit as well. The owner primarily plays in a 60s tribute band kind of thing. A lot of Mercy Beat, a lot of Beatles, the occasional American interloper, pretty much from about 1960 to early 70s as far as Badfinger and stuff like that go. Plays Gretches and Rickenbackers and all kinds of things I don't have, but he also uses a Strat. I don't have a lot of Beatles-specific guitars, though I'm a huge fan. I do have the Strat, which is close enough to some of their Strats, and an SG, which is great for the Revolver stuff. And the 335 does a lot of the later stuff that they use Les Pauls for. A note on if you're doing early 60s music or 50s music, until 1967, I believe it was, this position and this position on a Strat did not really exist unless you got in there and jammed a matchstick in or very carefully balanced it and didn't touch it. But, you know, groups like the Beatles didn't know about that trick. Anytime they used a Strat, it was bridge, middle, or neck. Those are the sounds. So we're going to start with a pretty typical Revolver era middle pickup sound. Pretty sure this was a Strat on the original. We do the mids boost to get the sound of the Conquerors and Defiance they were starting to use, and the 7120s, is that it? The Ultra Linear on the big, I can't remember the model number, 7120 with the tube output stage and the solid state preamp stage, the hybrids. It's going to shift the mids forward a little bit more, give a little more gain. Too much gain here, so let's keep the mids boost and turn the volume down a little bit. That's kind of the clang you would get from that era of stuff. And if you want to go back to the really jangly stuff, let's do the exaggerated example. Take that switch back to the top boost circuit, boost the highs a little bit. It really does take your head off in person. On the album recording, it wasn't just this. It was a lot of EQ'd on the channels and multiple Fairchild compressors to get that really painful bright sound. Dialing the treble back to a more sane place. Let's switch to the other Beatle guitar. All right, same amp settings. Let's do the trick of turning the tone stack all the way off to get that sound a little more accurate. That's such a great sound. The tone stack on the top boost Foxes is weird. And when you turn the treble and bass all the way down, like that, you get a huge mid-range thing, and it's something that you hear on a lot of those records from the period. If you really want to get there, use heavier gauge flat wound strings. I'm not in a tribute band, so I'm not going to do that. But let me bring the gain up a little bit with that same setting. And a lot of bands were doing this kind of thing with the Voxes. It's a really cool sound. You rip the speaker and you get even closer, but I'm not going to do that. Let's take the tone stack back and then we'll revisit that little switch. Let's flip that switch. A lot of great sounds live there. It's a lot of fun to play with. For those wondering why I kept the SG and sold the Les Paul, for the sounds I like, this thing is just a little bit more there. It's just a bit more of a big telly on steroids. That's just the sounds I like. And let me turn this up a little bit. Now I've got the gain about 10 o'clock on the channel, and we've had the master at 2 o'clock for the whole thing. That's enough for this morning. But you know, the stock amp is pretty damn good if you get a custom classic AC15, the CC1 or the CC1X. If you get the CC1, the Wharfdale speaker that comes with absolutely sucks. I do recommend upgrading it to something else besides the Wharfdale. And if you do nothing else, that one resistor, that 220K that I mentioned, that's in place of the cut circuit. I'll put the resistor number up here on the screen right now. If you just put another resistor across it, maybe a 82K or 68K across that 220, you'll have a much more balanced sound. It'd be a little less bright. As you can hear, it still gets bright. It just doesn't have that nails on the blackboard thing.